So I'm here with Holly Yates and Shawn Costello Whooley. I'm Miranda Morris. We are doing a 2-day pre-conference workshop at the ACBS World Conference 2025. It's a virtual workshop. And we're here to talk a little bit today about what we see the workshop being about and just generally how we think about this early practice in acceptance and commitment therapy, how you start to really get your footing, how you start to deepen your work, deepen your practice. And it's just going to be a fun, free-form conversation with some targeted edits where and when we feel like we have said something that we wish we hadn't said. If only life had this capacity.
To just cut and edit and skip over and redo. Yeah.
And Photoshop and filter and all
and
those
Photoshop and filter, right? And we're going to do a little editing. We're not doing Photoshop or filter. So let's start just in regards to our workshop, our Now What workshop for folks who are newer to ACT. I want to ask each of you, and I'll take a turn too, but I want to start with you two. Why are you doing this? Why are we doing this? How would you answer that question?
Well, why are we doing this? Well, first, I love to work with you both. I love this work. And I like the idea of the Now What being very natural. Like, how do we really have a therapy session that is a conversation, that is a connection, that is vulnerable, that hits all the places on the hexaflex and becomes and is meaningful, rather than just kind of like telling somebody what to do or pulling out a metaphor or tugging a rope, right? What can we do to really be contingently responding to each other?
Great. Thank you. Shawn, how about you? Why are we doing this?
I agree with what Holly just said. I think so often people study ACT and then they know ACT academically. And maybe more so than even other modalities, it's such an experiential practice. And so I think this workshop is going to be an opportunity to really get to experience the transitions and the flow and fluidity of moving from a process to another process, or picking where to go next and how to go next in a way that isn't quite as stilted as maybe when you're first learning it.
Beautiful. So my interest in this workshop and in doing this workshop with you two is I think we all have sort of a shared experience when we first came to the model of wondering, how do you know what to do? We all fell in love with the model. We all thought, I want to be able to do this, but we didn't know, because nobody knows when they're starting. Like, what kind of intervention do you use, when and why, and what are you looking for in using that intervention? And I'm interested in giving people more of a kind of a fluid, flexible sense of how to implement ACT strategy and to bring kind of our philosophy into the room, into therapy, so that we feel that however we deliver ACT, it's ours. It's not just, a kind of a collection of strategies, a collection of interventions. My next question is, if we were speaking to participants in our workshop, what would we want them to know about what they can expect from this workshop? What can they hope to learn?
That they can't do it wrong. And that flexibility is fun. I think we're going to have some fun with this workshop.
And not only, can you not do it wrong, but if you find yourself in places where you're feeling really uncomfortable, then you're doing it right.
So Holly, is it fun? Or is it uncomfortable? Or is it an and?
It's all of it.
Yeah.
It's like the creative part of that, right? The curiosity. When we're uncomfortable, that's where the curiosity lies. Like, what just happened there? Do you know?
So I want each of us to take a minute to think about, what is it that you think helps a person move from that brand new beginner status to a more kind of fluent, confident ACT practitioner? How does one do that?
Curiosity and some good functional analysis, I think, are the things that really move a person from starting point to kind of getting into that fluency with that.
Willingness. So we're asking our clients to be willing, and we as practitioners have to be willing to kind of dive in. I think listening is going to be really important, so we know actually what to do and what process to kind of evoke. And practice.
I would definitely agree with what both of you are saying. I think, and I'm taking a little bit from what both of you are saying, but I think that really moving, sort of getting greater depth in the ACT model requires us to practice ACT from the inside out. I think that what we are asking our clients to do, it's hard to evoke if you aren't thinking in terms of, or if you don't have your own experience as a reference point to know what it's like to really bring your attention to the present, or to know what it's like. This is the hardest one for me as a person, to be willing to contact painful thoughts and feelings and memories. It feels, I think, unnatural to most of us, and we don't want to do it. And understanding that struggle, I think, helps us sort of, I always think of like shepherding our clients. It helps us shepherd our clients to, show up to their own experience in ways that maybe seem counterintuitive or scary, but that are important if they want to actually then reorient their lives and move towards things that they care about.
I also think that, like, as a practitioner, as a therapist, we want to heal and we want to make people better. And we don't want people to suffer, which is really very paradoxical to the very thing that we're doing. So our willingness to be in that pain with them is so important to actually moving through it. To kind of piggyback off of what both of you were saying. So rather than like, let's make it better, or let's fix this, or let's move it into something else, like, am I willing to like sit with it for a moment, with you in it for a moment?
I think you both are talking about being very present in all the ways with whomever we're sitting with.
I cannot think of any, like, if you had to bring a single skill to your work as an ACT therapist, I can't think of anything more important than being fully present with your client, right? Sort of from a place of heart, but also in an attentional way, to really learn how to pay attention to sort of, I always say, like, illuminate, like, what's actually happening right now, right? Where is this person's stuckness, right? The stuckness they have in their lives. Where is it showing up in the work that we're doing in therapy? And how do we use our ability to see that in session to kind of, help them make change in the moment, right? And take that change out into their actual lives. So here's something I've been thinking about a lot lately, because I'm bumping into it a lot. And I have a thought on this, but I want to know what you two think. When you're working either in training ACT or in doing consultation work or supervision work, What are the big misconceptions you see most commonly among people that are new to the model?
I think sort of maybe a protocolized, version. I have to hit this and I have to this process and I have to hit this process and this process. And what if we're working on whatever process is coming up really genuinely, naturally? Right. So if I have this idea that I think we're going to work on values, what if that's actually not what we're working on at all? And I have to listen to the client so that I know where they want the therapy to move. We'll get it at some point, just maybe not now.
Right. So this notion, and I see this too all the time. People think, there's a place to start. There's a next step. There's a next step. There's a next step, sort of protocolized version, as you put it, Holly, as opposed to using, your experience in the room to guide where you go, even if it's not what you had in mind for your session. Yeah.
Which is really where the magic happens, right?
Can you say more?
When something comes up really genuinely, organically. Like just now, like you just said, wait, what? Can you say more?
That was very organic. Shawn, what do you think? What do you think are the big misconceptions?
Yeah, I think a big misconception that I see often is that there's the right way or the wrong way, or that I screwed it up or messed it up if I did X, Y, or Z. And the fact is, ACT is a lot of data gathering, and it's all data. And so you can use that. And so kind of whatever happens, short of some sort of egregiously inappropriate comment, right? Like almost anything that happens is all grist for the mill. It's all useful information.
I love that point so much, because I think often in early ACT or when, whether it's an introductory workshop or two, or the books, there's things go away in the workshop or in the book. And so then we think that with our clients, that exercise or intervention should go that way. And when it doesn't, there's often this worry that, oh, I did it wrong. And maybe you did do it wrong. But I think it's actually more interesting to just open up to, oh, wow, I got something other than what I expected. And that's really good information. That's good information, right? It doesn't mean that I have blown it just now. It means that this person is maybe struggling in a way that I didn't fully understand before.
I think it's good information in terms of your conceptualization of what's happening with them. And I think it's also a really great opportunity just to model some flexibility too, and curiousness and genuineness and openness, and lead the way from there. One of the things that separates ACT from other modalities is the therapist's stance. And I think we'll talk about it in our Now What workshop. And part of that is how we get to use ourselves in the room, both for modeling and as another human being, and how everything is interconnected and all of our interactions are useful and helpful. So I think that all gets folded into that as well.
I think that, well, I've been bumping into some misconceptions lately, so I have somewhat more specific ones. This is the one that really just, that really makes me think about what we need to remember to emphasize when we teach. What I hear people say is something like, so I know in ACT, you don't really do like people's history. You don't really do early childhood or childhood experiences. And honestly, I don't know how that has become such a common misconception, but I hear it all the time. This notion that you have to somehow use another model to ask people about their early learning experiences, when in fact, I think one of the most important things about, good ACT therapy is understanding someone's history, understanding their context. I want to know about your childhood. I want to know about adolescence. I want to know about experiences prior to this conversation that is, happening in therapy, in as much detail as I need, one, so that I understand what's happening for you, but also so that you as a client can make some sense of experiences that might be very confusing. So that sense that ACT is sort of a, just do it, skill building, today forward model, really, it breaks my heart every time, because that's not who we are and it's not what we do. And I certainly don't want people new to the model to think that they somehow cannot be ACT consistent, and ask people, right, where did you come from? What's your history? What shaped you? What brought you to this moment?
Yeah, functional contextualism is that behaviors made sense once upon a time. In the context in which they were developed, they made sense. And are they making sense now? And if I don't know where they came from, and my client doesn't know where they came from, and how adaptive they were in perhaps a maladaptive context, what do we do when the context changes and the client is still engaging in the same behaviors? We don't know that unless, and you know me, I love the stories. I love to know where people came from, to give meaning to their behaviors, and then move from there. But moving from there without any kind of where did I come from doesn't feel like it's really honoring the client or their life or their pain or their suffering in order to move out of their suffering. Right? So I think that's really important. And that idea of you're not your story. Okay, well, my story happened. Now what do I want it to be moving forward? I don't have to continue to live out the same thing that I've been living out that has been just causing me so much pain and suffering.
And I think regarding the myth of not ever, talking about sort of early childhood experiences or history, sort of another myth bust here is the functional aspect of functional contextualism. Like, what's the function of hearing that behavior? How or that information? Like, how are you intending to use it? And if it's sort of just a story for story's sake, or because you're supposed to on an intake, but you're not going to do anything with that information, then perhaps that wouldn't be useful. But when we're going to use that information in terms of painting a picture of the context in which behaviors developed, then absolutely it's functional contextual.
Functional and functional contextual. Absolutely.
Yeah. All the big words.
All the big words. All the big words. They have function too, those big words that we use.
Yeah. Any other big misconceptions that you commonly bump into?
It's not ACT. It's never going to be ACT. It is ACT, capital A, capital C, capital T. Yeah. ACT.
So the deal is, if you want people to know what you're talking about, don't say ACT.
Right. So our pro tip for beginning ACT therapists is don't say ACT, say ACT. It's such a good acronym. It's a shame that people would miss it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other misconceptions? Or just points of struggle that you see people having? Maybe even points of struggle that you see people newer to ACT have that that we will try to address, and I think we'll probably successfully address in our workshop. Now what? ACT beyond the basics.
I think a lot of times people are very hesitant to jump in to using what they know of ACT because they think they don't know how to do it yet. ACT is just as much or maybe more a philosophy even than a modality of therapy. And it's something that once you have a couple of ideas of what might be ACT like, you can start engaging it in your practices right away, and you're doing ACT. You don't have to wait for some sort of magical kind of, boundary point or threshold to start doing ACT.
You don't need to know the whole model and have this incredible depth and comprehension to start bringing in some of the processes. You could start, I'm thinking, you could start trying to kind of shape up more ability to be present in session, or to bring some willingness to hard stuff in session without knowing the whole model, like without having the complete, the complete thinking, the complete ACT kit. You could practice a little bit and see how that goes, right? And then layer in some more and layer in some more without being totally expert. Yeah.
Right. There's nothing to like, we're not checking off the list. We're like, oh, I hit diffusion. Oh, I got values. Right. It's not like a list that I have to refer to make sure that I get to everything in that moment.
Yeah.
It's so, it's two people in a room, like 2 human beings, 3 human beings in a room looking to decrease suffering, right, on the person that is the client. So it's a shared partnership, I think.
I have a kind of an extension of that, which is that a question that people ask me a lot when I'm teaching ACT is, if I do this thing from motivational interviewing, or if I do this intervention, like if I do chair work, right? Because people come to ACT from all different therapeutic modalities. And so when they ask, can I do this thing from a different modality? Is that okay? Is that allowed? What I want people to kind of anchor in is, if the intervention promotes psychological flexibility, then it is ACT consistent. And people get really stuck on that. And I see why. You read the books, you go to the workshops, and you see a lot of the same metaphors or a lot of the same exercises. And you think, okay, so that's what ACT is. And one of the things that I would love for us to be able to teach more effectively is that anything that promotes psychological flexibility, like, bring it in, right? If it's something from improv or drama therapy or play therapy, if it helps people move more flexibly, more fluidly towards what they care about, without letting painful thoughts and feelings get in the way, then it absolutely fits. And I just think that there's tremendous freedom in knowing that. And it feels very important to me to communicate that to clinicians.
And not having the painful feelings, but like you said, not letting it get in the way, right? The notion of, when I'm done with this, then I will do this. I don't think we ever get done with this. The anxiety or the sadness or the grief or that will be there. And you said that so well, Miranda. It's like, I don't want that to get in the way of moving me in the direction of what I want my life to be about. And in these trainings, we're asking participants to go to all those really uncomfortable places. Like, I'll ask my clients sometimes, is it okay if we just like sit in the yuck together? They're like, thank you.
Oh, your clients say thank you, huh?
Yeah, they're like, thank you for letting me sit in the yuck. Maybe not exactly that way.
Maybe not exactly. Thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, because it's already here. And so maybe letting it be here instead of, having your dukes up all the time. Maybe there's something in that.
You think?
I think.
Yeah.
So this is inspiring another question, which is, what are your favorite things about ACT for you as a person, for what you get to bring as a clinician, like the concepts, the ideas, the principles? What are your favorite things about what we get to do?
So I think the idea that you can identify, name what you want your life to be about, without it having to be right or wrong, right? It's not a morals question. It's a what does this mean to you? How do you want to show up in the world, in your life? And then really dig into that. Like, what does that mean when I show up that way? What does that mean when I don't? To me and to the people that care about me. Like I love that part.
I have a thought. This is actually what brought me to ACT, was something that remarkably, I don't think I learned until I was maybe 29 years old, which is that you can have really hard stuff. You can have a lot of anxiety or depression or trauma. And I had my own personal collection, mostly anxiety. You can have that stuff and you can still do hard things. You don't have to sort of get better in order to pursue the things that you care about. And that was like, for me, my mind was blown by that, because I had been working so hard to not feel like a messed up person so that I could go and be a therapist. And I hear it actually often now from folks that I consult with or supervise. They'll say, I need to resolve my stuff before I can, pursue this goal or be a therapist. And I just want to shout it from the rooftops. It's like, you don't have to be perfect. You will not be perfect. You can be anxious and work with people who struggle with anxiety. It doesn't let you off the hook for taking care of yourself, right? And doing your own work, but you're not going to be perfect. So have your anxiety, have your self-criticism, have your nail biting, and show up to people, maybe even with a little added empathy, because you know what it's like to be stuck, and you know what it's like to, be deep in struggle.
This notion that, and I think this is sort of our social networks or the, the climate in which we live, which is both traumatizing and everybody has to, think positively and be great. And you get to choose all these wonderful things, and life doesn't have to be hard. And life is hard. I think by definition, it is hard. And when we look at it can't be hard, and we accept it is hard, and now what? That's when, we get some really nice work done for ourselves and for our clients. I was asked, like, who said that? It's like, who told you this? Who told me this? Like, who is that that said life is supposed to be easy?
Yeah, who started that rumor?
I know. Let's find them.
Shawn, what do you love? Is that what you were going to say? Something that you love?
Well, I think it puts the human back in human behavior, right? It sort of meets us where we are and says where you are is okay. And we can do hard things, like what you were saying that attracted you to ACT so much, Miranda. Wherever you are, that's okay. And keep moving towards the things that are important to you, even if it's painful. That's okay. It's sort of eye-opening, actually. And I think that's one of the things that sets ACT apart a little bit from other treatment modalities is, if your thoughts are wrong, fix them. If, you had a bad mommy and daddy, fix that. Cut them out, or do this or do that, and ACT's like, okay, wherever you are, whatever you want to make of that in terms of meaning and vitality, we'll work with that. The flexibility and the choice, being right where you are, is really lovely and human, and we can see that in all of us.
Yeah, right. You don't have to be different. You could maybe do different.
Yes.
Right. And I say that with caution, because it's like tiny steps, maybe just tiny little moves towards doing things differently in your life is completely possible, even when nothing in here has changed. So let me ask the two of you, what questions do you have for our little group here
that we think people would like to hear us riff on?
Yeah, I'd like to hear you riff on.
That's the other thing I like about ACT. We love to hear each other riff about ACT all the time. This is what we do. On our off time, people.
This
Just
is
saying.
all. This is all we talk
For
about.
reals. This is what we do. This is all we do. We talk about this, just like we're doing now. This is completely genuine.
Well, Shawn and Miranda, you both said like do the hard thing even when it's hard. And I'm thinking let's do the hard thing, especially when it's hard. It's like meet ourselves in that place, like especially when it feels like we can't do it. In whichever way that looks, right? That's the psychological flexibility. Do we have to rest? Do we have to connect with someone? Do we have to take steps forward? Do we have to, what do we have to do in order to still move in the direction of how we want to show up in a flexible way? You know, in order to be like, I don't necessarily like the word perfect at all. I'm not even sure what perfect means really. I'm sure I could look it up and they will tell me, but I don't know what that means. But in order to be effective, then these are the things that I have to do that shows that I'm effective. You know, am I willing to have other things that show that I'm effective?
You know, Holly, as you say that, I'm thinking about the hard parts for me. I certainly see this with clients, but I'm most aware of it in myself is when we think about the 6 core processes. We have our favorites and then we have our not favorites.
I don't know what you're talking about, Miranda.
No, it's just me. And I'm thinking about it's sort of I don't know if this is my favorite process or my most hated process. It's the one that I most need, and that's acceptance, although I don't like the word acceptance. Right? I really prefer the word willingness, and I find willingness to be really anxious or to be self-critical. These are all the things that I actually do. Be really self-critical or to have sort of shame attacks or to have anxiety. I cannot believe how difficult it is to let that stuff kind of be here, even as I say yes to things that I really want. I just wish they weren't so hard. I wish it was not so difficult to have pain. And I think about that a lot with my clients because they often will talk about, if I were being accepting or if I were being willing, then I would be okay. And I always want to say, no. Willingness is not about being okay. Willingness is not about being, completely even keeled and, kind of zen about whatever you're struggling with. It's about sort of my personal metaphor. It's like when the fire alarm is going off, including the sprinklers, and I continue with what I'm doing, right? Because I can't turn off the fire alarm or the sprinklers. And there's something important that I need to do. And so I guess it makes it sort of also a favorite process because, man, oh man, do I get it? Right. And I love being able to share with people like, you don't have to like this. You don't have to be good with your anxiety or your self-criticism or your depression. You can say, I don't like this. And you can go do the thing that matters to you anyway.
It's the being okay with not being okay. It's like, ugh. And I have to do the thing. And that's also what I love about ACT is that we don't have to be so technical and so precise when we're talking to clients, right? That we can actually show up as human beings and say things like, ugh, and say, oh, what is the meaning behind that? Like, what is it that we have to work toward? Mine is kind of the values piece, like losing sight of that sometimes. It's really important to be able to get back to it for me. Like these are the things that really matter to me. And when in times of like real struggle and suffering, I might lose sight of some of those things. So how do I give myself permission and compassion for having them and losing sight of them and then continuing to commit to moving in that direction?
I think one of the struggles that I have that shows up in my personal life inevitably shows up in my job as a therapist, which is sort of creative hopelessness, right? I'm not really good with that one because there's always a solution. And sometimes there's not, but my mind tells me that I can figure my way out of it. And so sometimes I find myself doing that clinically. And I think, like what you said a moment ago, Miranda, it's my least favorite and therefore my most favorite, right? Because it's a reminder to really intentionally sit with that. Sitting with and not trying to solve everything away.
You know, and the thing that I love about acceptance that maybe sometimes people might not get, and maybe they will, is that if we can change something, change it. Right? Like if you can do something about something, do something about something. We don't have to accept the things that we actually can do something about. That's not what we're asking anybody to do. If you can go, I don't know, and if someone is treating you horribly and you can go and talk to them about it, go and talk to them about it. If you can't, that's when we have to like make room for acceptance and willingness.
Such a good point. People often think that acceptance or willingness means that you have to sort of always just be like this open receiver of all of the emotional and cognitive and sensory experiences. And no, right? Or circumstances out in your life. Like, no, right? There are lots of things that you can address effectively without getting in your own way.
Yeah.
It's just when it gets in the way, when, you know, the fight with your own experience or unchangeable circumstances. It's just when it gets in the way that it's kind of a you know, something to think about, you know, kind of a target for consideration in terms of, you know, doing something a little bit different. Because I love to control things that I can control.
I would love to control things that I can't control.
I would love to control
all the things.
All the things.
I tried that for decades. Just to kind of bring it back to our workshop, or Now What? Act Beyond the Basics workshop. I'm going to say a little bit about what I want people to know about what we mean to do. Right? We're not doing a brand new intro ACT workshop. You've never seen the model. You may not have it memorized, but this is not a brand new to the model workshop. We'll certainly talk about, you know, definitions of each of the terms, like we'll have that review. But what I think we're doing in our Act Beyond the Basics, or our Now What? Act Beyond the Basics workshop, what I think that we're doing that's important is we're inviting people to see how each of these, what appear to be sort of distinct processes, really are always working together all the time, right? There's no place to start. There's no best place to be, right? It's all working in an integrated fashion and all working with, I don't know how to say this, all working, or when we're trying to evoke the processes or teach the processes, it's all about what is happening right now for the client in this moment, in the client's life, and how can we use the 6 core flexibility processes to help them do something different, right? Maybe do something different next Tuesday, or maybe do something different in this moment with, you know, the tears that are coming up, or do something different with my ideas about, you know, how I should treat people. And all of the processes are happening all of the time, which I don't know if people find that overwhelming or liberating. But I would love for our participants to walk out appreciating, like, it's all happening all of the time, right? And I can kind of push a little more here, or maybe a little less here, in the hopes of helping my client become more psychologically flexible. And then, frankly, in my own practice, being more psychologically flexible as a therapist and as a human being. What do you guys think we're teaching?
Well, that certainly. And if we know, like if we have a case conceptualization, if we know the direction that the client wants to go, right, from invitation, from willingness, from acceptance, from the client, which I think promotes the psychological flexibility part that is the vital part of this, right? Is that we are human beings in the room too. And if we get it wrong, then we take responsibility for it, whatever getting it wrong means. But if we're looking at functional analysis, like the consequences, and if we get it wrong, is like the perfect place to start. Like that just happened. Okay, what do we do now? What do we do now?
It really highlights, Holly, the beauty of the mistake.
Yes.
Right? We're asking our clients to notice, what are you doing? How is it working? Like that sort of functional question. And that question is available to us too.
It is.
Oh, look, I just did that. Look what happened. Do I want to do the same thing? Maybe. Do I want to do something different? Maybe. Yeah. So we are doing exactly what our clients are doing, like in parallel.
Well, and it broadens our client's perspective taking, right? Like you client, I'm assuming, want me to be there for your mistakes. For example, if you say something that you don't think is right or lands, or like, can you be available to mine too? And what is that like? Like when you're available to mine, maybe you can be more available to your own. So much.
What do you think, Shawn?
I think in our Now What workshop, we are going to offer lots of opportunities to practice in a really low stakes, friendly human environment. Practice synthesizing what comes next, one process to another, taking some risks, or what seem like risks, right, clinically, and just a lot of practice.
Yeah, I'm hoping, my hope for our workshop, What Now? Act Beyond the Basics. My hope is that we get to do lots of practice, lots of interaction, and lots of demonstration. Like the three of us, I think, are really going to be on the line in a way that never stops being scary. To do role plays. Like I want to work with you two. I want to work with participants to really kind of craft, like, how do you bring this in? How do you bring in this skill? How do you bring in this intervention? How do you bring in this language in the room? Right? Like there's the model, and that, right, those words will only take you so far. So I think our work in the workshop will be to really drop into demonstrations, be they real plays or role plays, to invite participants to practice, maybe in ways that are novel, hopefully that are like a little bit challenging or scary, so that we can all kind of, I always think of it as so that we can all contact our own effectiveness, so that we can all push ourselves a little bit, so that we can all, how about this? So that we can all even maybe make some mistakes.
I mean, I think the scary is going to be there, right? Like once the stakes are high, and there's no higher stakes than how people feel walking into therapy, right? Then it's scary. So how do we accept that, embrace that, be willing to have that, be flexible around that, all of those things? Like, what if that's actually not a bad thing at all? What if that's actually what we're looking for? I also want people to make this model theirs, right? It's not like you're stepping into somebody else. Like you get to try this on and make it your act therapy version of how you want to be an act therapist.
That is such a good point, Holly. I remember early on in my training, I had sort of certain trainers who I thought, oh my gosh, I want to be like that trainer or that trainer. And I kind of tried to be like that trainer and that trainer. And it absolutely didn't work because I was too in my head thinking like, well, what would she say? And what would he do? And I'm so glad that I finally kind of shook that, because ACT we don't need a community of therapists who are all
the same.
All the same. Like, we need different voices, right? The same principles, the same guiding principles in philosophy, but with lots and lots of different voices, because there are lots and lots of different people out there who require various things of their therapists. So I actually like the idea of emphasizing that your voice, your voice, your style, right? Right, sitting on top of a grounded, coherent model, right? Theory, philosophy, and then you on top of that with skills that have a remarkable amount of empirical support.
I think doing ACT from your own voice in some ways is the trickiest and the easiest thing to do, right? When we're at the very academic level and just learning the concepts, and it's sort of rote, it's sort of one thing. And where we are with this coming workshop, how we're stitching the pieces together, is really an opportunity to find a way to stitch the pieces together from your own heart, from your own lived experience, from your own humanness. And then when you can sort of deliver that very genuinely, I think people sort of hear it more than if you're trying to copy someone else's voice. I saw Miranda do it this way, so now I'm going to say it that way. And then it's not delivered in a genuine way. And so people aren't going to sort of see you living it when you're offering it. But it's really hard to take the risk to find your own voice.
I sort of think, I don't even know if this will be helpful, but I'm going to tell you lovelies anyway. All of these sort of biopic movies that are out, right? Bob Dylan's movie and whoever Elvis is, when someone is doing a direct imitation of them, it's like a Vegas show. But when you get the idea of who they are and you bring yourself to who they are and you're faithful to what they've been through, it's believable as can be and genuine and connecting. And I think that's what we want to do.
Right. I don't want to be a Vegas show.
I don't want to be a Vegas show. Wait, here's my metaphor. Like, I don't want to do.
Right. I'm going to talk in a totally different voice. I'm going to take out my therapist voice. Yeah. And I say this, with warmth and humor, and I'm making fun of myself because I did used to have a therapist voice. It was very therapist-y. It was kind of soft, and I don't know, but it wasn't my voice. That's not how I talk. This is how I talk. So this is great. I'm gonna suggest that we kind of wrap this up here. Thank you both. This has been really fun. We will definitely do this again. Right. And let's kind of fade to black, and I'll see you both again soon.